Spooky story time. If you love spooky stories, follow for more. The following is a story from Reddit, and it goes like this. I grew up in a seriously haunted house, so it takes a lot for something paranormal to really scare me. I've seen things, heard things, you name it. Startle me? Sure. Scare me? Nah. Here's the only time I've ever actually been scared. Ready? I lived in an apartment complex about 11 years ago, and other than some terrifyingly large wolf spiders, never heard or saw anything paranormal. Then, the old dude who lived across me had a party one weekend, and his brother died. Alcohol poisoning. His body lay there for over 12 hours because everyone thought he was sleeping it off. After he passed, I would occasionally hear some odd sounds, but nothing major. Then one night, I was laying in the bed with my toddler, waiting for her to go to sleep, and something blocked the light that had been shining into the bedroom from the bathroom. I whipped my head off the pillow and looked toward the door, and there was a black mass that was loosely in shape of a person in the doorway. My whole body started tingling, and I squeezed my eyes shut for a moment because I was terrified and unsure if it was a real person who had broken in or something paranormal. I popped my eyes back open, and it was gone. So I hopped up out of the bed and grabbed my shotgun and a couple shells and took off after it. The only door in the apartment still had both locks, locked, and the chain was still in place. Windows were closed and locked. I checked under every bed and inside all the closets and didn't find anything. I heard noises again after that, but never saw anything again. I moved a couple months later after my lease was up. So what do you guys think? Could it have been the neighbor's brother? Or just something of imagination? Let me know in the comments below. And thank you again for watching.
Let's read another scary story. This one is called Hoofy, a true story a native inmate told me. This is an old story told to me from a few years ago. I was just reminded of it a couple days back when retelling it, and I'm curious if anyone else has ever heard of this or if it was made up by the person who told me it. I used to work at a maximum security prison where I was in charge of overseeing the production of food. Not a CO by any means, but I was able to talk to inmates very frequently. One early morning, I was doing paperwork when one of the inmates was doing some sort of stalking, and we were talking about urban legends. This man was Native American, I think Navajo, but I could be wrong. He will be dubbed Storm for the sake of this story. And Storm told me about a legend and an experience he had in his reserve about some sort of devil. A devil called Hoofy. He claims there is this handsome man with a tall white cowboy hat and boots that frequently goes into casinos. He doesn't gamble, he flirts with beautiful young women and lures them out of the casino. Once he takes these women to his home, he transforms into this tall creature with shaggy goat legs and long black hair. His beautiful face turned into a mix of a demonic horse and a wolf with piercing red eyes. He devours these women and leaves their clothing around his homestead as a memento of his killings. I laugh because it sounds like a typical monster, but Storm gets serious and then he tells me that he had a close encounter with Hoofy and he barely made it out alive. Storm and his cousin lived in an Arizona reservation, on the other side of South Mountain, very close to my hometown in Estrella Mountain. One day, he and his cousin were drinking and trying to pass the time as there wasn't much to do. They decided to take a walk into the desert just for the hell of it. Not much to do anyways. It was about half an hour or so from sundown, so the two tread off in a direction and enjoy the scenery of the plain desert. They walk for about 15 minutes or so when they come across this abandoned church-like building. The two walk through the church and out the back, walking through broken pews with the floor creaking with each step. They laughed about how freaky and weird this old building was before slowly making their way out. They walk out the door and jump over a trench just past the back end of the church. The pair continued to walk and laugh when they came across something strange. Storm says he saw a wide arrangement of shoes, muddied red high heels, black flats, torn brown pumps, an assortment of women's shoes scattered around them that were broken and dirty, clearly abandoned for some time. Storm picked up a shoe to inspect it when he turned to his cousin. The look on his cousin's face was that of complete and utter horror. His face was pale and his eyes were wide, close to tearing, and he was looking behind Storm. Storm was about to turn around when his cousin stopped him. "No," he whispers, placing his hands on Storm's shoulder. "Don't look up. Keep your head down, man." Frightened, Storm follows his cousin's word. He had never seen his cousin so freaked out. Then he heard it, a pair of heavy footsteps walking behind him. The sound of labored breathing matching with the steps, and Storm feels as though his whole body felt 10 degrees colder. His shoulders were shaking when his cousin pulled his hand and stepped back slowly. "We need to go." His voice was nearly lost in the heavy steps behind him, but Storm heard him just barely. "Whatever you do, don't look back," was the last thing his cousin told him before he booked it. The pair ran as fast as they could, sprinting past the old church and running to their homestead. His cousin yelled out native prayers in hopes that some sort of ancestral guardian could stop this beast. All the while, Storm could hear the galloping of hooves behind them, the feeling of the creature's breathing against the back of his neck. Hot and stinky breath smelling of rotten fish, motivating him to keep running no matter how tired he got. For he knew he would be this creature's next meal if he slowed down one bit. They ran, cutting the time back to their home in half. They safely did make it back inside their home just as the sun was setting, bathing their home in a warm orange glow. Panting against the wall, Storm placed a hand over his fast-beating heart. Scared of what he might see, but he had to know, Storm stumbled to an outside window and pulled back a blind, peering out into the dusking landscape. In the direction that they came from, Storm could see the back of the creature walking away, an 8-foot-tall being with long, silky black hair that reached its waist. Where human legs should be, instead was a pair of long goat-like legs with black stamping hooves that kicked up dust as it walked away.
Someone sent me a story saying that her neighbor was a witch and she tried to take her in her sleep. A few years ago, Bella was sleeping in her room. She was sleeping on her left-hand side. Now, the left-hand side of her is closest to her window. She wakes up in the middle of the night around 1 a.m. and she happens to hear footsteps, like slow, deliberate footsteps. It was as if somebody was in the yard and were like confident that they weren't going to get caught. She decides that she's going to get up and look out the window. So she gets up, she walks over to the window, and she sees a silhouette of a woman walking around in her yard. The woman looks over at her and she recognizes her. It's her neighbor. But something happened to her eyes. They just turned black, and like big black. Then she starts to see these dark circles form underneath her eyes that are like very pronounced. This obviously really scared her, but then boom, she wakes up. It was a dream, but that's not the end of it. So she decides that she's gonna get up. So she goes to get up. She cannot move. She's stuck. She cannot even form a sentence. She cannot make a sound. She starts to try to scream because she's terrified, but she cannot make a sound. And then she sees something out of the corner of her eyes, and her heart is racing at this point. It starts slowly creeping towards her, and for some reason in her head she was like, oh my god, I'm not gonna be here anymore. Like I'm not ready. I'm 15 years old. She was 15 years old at the time. She's like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. What is my family gonna think? Then it just creeps right to her bed and its face gets super close to hers. It had red eyes and she felt all the energy leaving her body. Like it was just literally being sucked out of her body. She's just praying and praying, and all she can again think is about her family, when suddenly it just stops. Suddenly she can move again. The silhouette disappears and now she is terrified. So she's just sitting there frozen in fear when she is just again thinking about, like, I have to tell my family this. How am I going to tell my family this? When she finally falls asleep. Next day, she could not even stomach looking at her neighbor. She just felt like something was terribly wrong. And the sucky thing was that her neighbor was always really nice to her, but the problem is that she, the next day, gets the same exact experience, except for it's not as intense this time. So she decides at this point that she's going to tell her mom because she's really freaked out about all this. So she tells her mom, and her mom pray about it. Next day, she wakes up. They find out that her neighbor had passed in the middle of the night. Something that she didn't know that was absolutely terrifying is that the community actually thought that this woman was a witch. And the reason why is because over a period of time, there was a few children who had dreams about this lady. And a few days later, after these dreams, each of these kids, she said at the end that she is just grateful that didn't happen to her, but she thinks about it all the time. And she's actually never told the story to anybody except for her mother and her family. And she thought that right now would be a good time to speak out about it. What do you guys think about that story?
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. True Philippine ghost story. I already know this is going to be good. This story was my mom's. She passed away in 2021, but it's the creepiest story she told us. It was around the late 1990s when my mom became friends with a neighbor that owns a small grocery store in our town. Not sure how my mom became close with her, but based on what I knew, the husband of the owner, who was a police officer, cheated on her, and they were having a rough time. My mom comforted this lady a lot, to the point that they were best friends. Unfortunately, my family had to move to a different city. And since this was the late 1990s, there was no social media yet. My mom and her best friend lost touch with each other. Oh no. Just a quick side note, I'm using the dry bar rollers, which I paid too much money for the amount of rollers you get in this box. They are softer on the hair, which is fine, but I have really thick hair and they hardly grab onto anything. I always have to use clips. I want a Velcro roller because I shouldn't have to use a clip with a Velcro roller. I always have such a hard time with them. My pink ones that I got these off Amazon. Baby, these grip your hair, okay? These will grip your hair and these do not fall out. I don't need any clips with those. Just if you're looking into Velcro rollers. I would say if you have like thinner hair, I have a lot of hair, okay? And this tiny little 6-pack does nothing for me. A couple of months went by and it was shown on the local news that the grocery owner took her husband's life. Hold on, okay. A couple of months went by and it was shown on the local news that the grocery owner took her husband's life by him while he was sleeping, and then herself too. Huh? One night my father wasn't home and my siblings and I were sleeping with my mom. My mom had a dream, and in her dream she was walking home with the grocery store owner on a long dark road. In her dream, my mom asked her, "Why are you walking this way? You live the other way." Her friend replied, "I'm dead. I'm just looking for you." What? I have had dreams where relatives who have passed on have come to visit in my dreams, but never have they been so blatant about being like, "I'm not alive anymore. I'm here to find you." I don't know how I would feel about that. My mom ran away as fast as she could, and when she reached our house in the dream, she woke up. Now, this is an important detail. The floor on the second floor of the house is made of bamboo strips, and between the gaps of the bamboo strip, you can see the floor below. I don't know where this is going, but I feel like I'm gonna hate it. A house like this was common back in the 90s to lessen the heat inside the house as we live in a tropical country. Relieved that it was only a dream, she stood up and was thinking of going to the bathroom downstairs when she saw someone below. Oh God, I knew I was gonna hate it. When she saw someone below between the gaps of the bamboo floor. It was looking up to her. The visual that just crossed my mind, oh my God, I can just see eyeballs. I can see like a weird like tilt to the, it's so gross. So I'm sick. I am genuinely sick. It was looking up to her. Like it wants her to know that it's downstairs. Like it followed her. This entire story is giving me the biggest creeps of all time. Oh my God. I knew it was gonna be good. But the visuals that I'm having right now are just really freaking me out. Just imagine waking up in the middle of the night after just this really weird dream, right? And you're like, okay, I'm safe at home, I'm good. You're getting up to walk to the bathroom. You look down, oh God, and you see somebody in between. Oh no. My mom was so afraid that instead of going to the ground floor, she went in a cup of coffee instead. Girl, I would have gone right there in my pants. After seeing that, I wouldn't have made it to the cup. Okay, we've got all the rollers in. This is the fun part. I'm using my shark with a little curling attachment, and I'm just gonna stick it inside each little roller to heat them up. I do this on the lowest fan setting and the highest heat setting. My hair can handle a good amount of heat, but I do it on the lowest fan setting so that it's not so crazy and the hair doesn't get blown out of the Velcro rollers. A couple of years after that, a family who apparently doesn't believe in ghosts moved into the house of the grocery store owner. The neighbors told them that a crime was committed in that house, but they didn't care. One afternoon, the kid of the people who moved into that house was watching anime in the living room when the kid heard someone clearing his throat in the bedroom. When the kid looked at the bedroom, he saw a guy sitting in bed asking him, "What are you doing in our house?" The family moved out in just a week. Oh no. Years after, a tricycle driver, which they explain here is like a mini taxi, I guess, happened to pass by the house of the grocery store owner at around 3 a.m. Oh, absolutely not. Why are we doing that? According to the driver, he saw a woman waving her hand, calling his attention like she needed a ride. He decided to go back because he thought that the lady was a passenger. The lady vanished like smoke when he was finally near her, and it scared the crap out of him. He only learned the story of the house in the morning when he told the neighbors what he saw. Oh my God. To this day, no one lives in that house. Oh.
So this past December, this guy says that his family decided to go to their grandmother's ranch that was in Tamaulipas. This wasn't the first time that they had gone there, but this was the first time they had gone in a very long time. Just in case you can't see them. The grandmother is old and she couldn't travel anymore, so the entire family decided to travel to her in Mexico. They knew that the little small town would have like the December parties, and there wasn't any bad intention with their visit. They just really wanted to go to their grandmother and just enjoy the time there. This town wasn't very big. There's like a handful of houses, there was a little plaza in the middle, and a big church. All the family ended up getting there in the middle of the day. You know, they said hello to people in the town, people that they hadn't seen in such a long time. They all ate together. He said that he even heard stories that he had already heard in the past, but every time they get together, they're the stories that they all share with each other. By nighttime, everybody started to move towards the plaza because at that night there was going to be a really big party. They did this party every year in December. There were live bands, there were people selling food, there was just like everybody in town was going to be there, and everybody was just going to take advantage of the fact that all of their families had come from out of town and just enjoy each other. Now, there wasn't a lot of people at this party. Again, this town was really small, but it was enough for the town to just feel alive at least once a year. He said that there was couples dancing, there were kids playing, and he was more so sitting down just observing everyone. He said a few hours had passed and the music was still going, people were still dancing. He explains that not everybody was like extremely drunk, they were all really just having a good time there. So around midnight, a lot of people did end up going home, but some people stayed to continue the party, and other people actually showed up to the party as well. He says that he was there till 3 in the morning, and there was a lot less people there, but the live band was still going. They had finished the song, so there was a pause when they were about to sing again, and within that pause, they heard a really loud scream. Everybody that was there stayed completely silent while they heard this scream, and it was obviously a woman's voice. The scream was also not close to the plaza where they were. It was outside of the town, almost like if it was coming from the streets that would lead you into the town. He said that he looked around at everybody, and it wasn't like anybody recognized that woman screaming. It was like everybody was thinking, what the fuck was that? People were looking at each other, almost questioning each other, and he said that it was almost as if nobody wanted to say anything in that moment, and that scream had literally stopped the party altogether. The band ended up playing songs, but it wasn't the same anymore. Everybody felt so awkward, and his family decided that they were gonna go home. It wasn't completely like because of the scream that they were gonna leave. It was because Tamaulipas in that moment was a little dangerous, so they were just like, let's just go home and play it safe. They all started walking towards the house, their grandmother's ranch that they were gonna stay in, and it wasn't super far away from the plaza, but it also wasn't really close by. They were all together, and they were not gonna go on their separate ways. They were gonna stay together the entire time. He doesn't remember them talking to each other either. It was like they were walking in silence all the way home, and about halfway he noticed when his little cousin started pointing in front of them. From far away, they were walking straight, and there was a street that would cut like this. He said that they saw somebody walking this way towards that street. It was a woman, and they could tell that she was walking really slowly in front of them, like if she wasn't in a rush or had a place to go to, like she was just wandering. Because of the distance, they weren't able to see her facial features or what she was wearing, like no details like that. In that moment, nobody said, oh, that must be the lady that screamed, but it was like they all knew that's definitely the woman that we probably heard when we were in the plaza. They kept walking without getting too close or too far away from that woman. She also didn't turn to look at them, didn't turn to follow them. She just kept on walking until they couldn't see her anymore because of the darkness in the ranch. They did end up making it home, and they ended up closing that door immediately behind them. He said that they all literally sat in the living room almost like if they were waiting for somebody to say something about that lady. It never happened. Nobody brought up the fact that they heard that scream, that they saw that lady. No one said anything. Little by little, everybody ended up getting up and going to their rooms to go to bed, and he was one of the last people to do so. He explains that in the room that he was staying in, he could see the front yard of the grandmother's ranch. He was laying there looking outside, and he said that nothing felt out of the normal, and there was no strange noises, like no steps, no animals, no nothing. The only thing he heard was the band still playing in the plaza from, very far away. But he couldn't stop thinking about that scream that they heard, the woman that they saw, and how nobody wanted to address it. A couple of days had passed and nobody even mentioned the scream or that lady even within those days. He did say that when he went into town, some of the people that lived there were talking about how they had heard something weird that night. But as soon as they would mention these strange sounds, they would stop talking about it as well altogether. Before he ended up leaving the ranch, he said that he talked to an aunt of his that had lived in this ranch her entire life. Without directly telling her what happened, he did mention about this weird sound he heard in the plaza. She listened to him without interrupting, and then she explained to him that that wasn't the first time that I had heard about this lady around those times. That's all she said though. She didn't get into it. She didn't explain anything further, and he says that they ended up leaving and going back to their town. The reason why he even wanted to share this story is because he could not get over it. He could not stop thinking about it and thinking about the fact that something weird happens in that town every December. He also sometimes thinks to himself, why didn't we stop and ask her if she needed help? Why didn't we stop and think to ourselves, what if she's lost? Why didn't we stop and help her? And he just revisits what happened over and over again. He also thought it was strange that no one asked for her name. No one even mentioned her the next day. No one said anything about her. There's truly no conclusion to this story because he still thinks to himself, was this lady lost? Was this lady real? Or was this lady something completely different? What do you guys think?
You and your friend wake up in the middle of the night and you realize that there's someone in the house that's not supposed to be there. It takes place in Florida, and it happened to two young men, one named Gabriel and one named Angel. It's that his best friend Angel lived at home with his great-grandmother, his mom, and his dad. To the next, Angel's great-grandmother had passed away. Supportive friend that Gabriel was, he decided to spend the night over at Angel's house the day of the funeral. It's that he tried to do everything he could to make sure his friend was okay. He would make jokes, spend time with him, play games, just to keep his mind at ease. It's that him and Angel decided to stay up after everyone went to sleep. Angel was hanging out in Angel's room when they decided to go to the kitchen to grab a glass of water, since they didn't have anything to drink in the room. Angel explains that the house was a earth shelter kind of home, which is half in the ground and half above ground. It's that to get from Angel's room to the kitchen, they had to go up a couple of steps, living room and into the kitchen. That brought a little bit of sadness to Angel passing by the living room because his great-grandmother's rocking chair was still there and they hadn't moved it. His mother wasn't ready to let go. Of course, from the kitchen, you can see into the living room. In the kitchen, drinking the glass of water, Gabriel asks Angel how's he feeling about the funeral and how's he feeling now that he's home and his grandma's not there. Before Angel can tell him how he's feeling, they hear the rocking chair move. Anybody would be curious on what's going on in the next room. Both Angel and Gabriel look towards the living room. They're rocking back and forth is Angel's great-grandmother. She realized that they were staring at her. She stopped and turned her head and looked straight at them. But all he heard was a gasp from Angel, and they both ran to the room. Running, Gabriel says that he can see her watching them run across the room and down the stairs. She didn't chase them. She just watched them the whole entire time. States that when they got to the room, Angel and him started questioning each other back and forth. Did you see it? Did you see it? Did you see it? And until Angel says, I saw her. It was my great-grandmother. And Gabriel was like, yes, it was. Did she chase us? And Gabriel said, no, she just watched us run. What do you guys think that was? Do you guys think that was the grandmother saying her farewell? Or was that something else?
I saw this video in here a while back that definitely left me thinking, and it had to do with brujeria. It got me thinking so much that I want to hear your thoughts on it. So the video's in Spanish. It starts off like a podcast sort of format. There's an interviewer interviewing this brujo. This brujo is apparently like a very big deal when it comes to like that sort of world, and he practices dark magic. The interviewer asks the brujo, what is the craziest experience that you have ever had with you practicing like brujeria? The brujo takes a moment to himself and then he responds. He says, a few years ago, there was this woman that approached him and told him that how much would he charge her in order to spiritually unalive the woman that her husband was having an affair with. I guess she found that her husband was having an affair and she wanted this woman out of the way. The brujo told her that he would charge her $10,000. So the woman went and paid him $10,000, and the brujo went ahead and started his work. Before the woman left, she told him, I just want to let you know that the woman that my husband is having an affair with is a Christian. She's a follower of Christ. I just thought you should know. And the brujo was like, that's not an issue. I could still do my job. I'll take care of it. Give me 2 weeks and she'll be out of the way. So the brujo goes and sets up, and he does all the things that he would typically do in order to get these like jobs going. He said he gave it his all. He put all his energy into the spell to make sure that the woman having an affair with the husband would be out of the way. 2 weeks passed, and the woman that paid him came to him and said, what's going on? It's been 2 weeks and that woman, it's still alive and well. Like, she's still with my husband. And the brujo is confused because this had never happened to him before. Like, all of his work has always like worked. So he's like, what the heck? So that night, as he's in like living room, he's meditating, he feels the undeniable presence of, he feels him enter his living room, and he hears a voice very sternly say, the woman that you're working on, that spell that you did, in order to get her out of the way, you need to drop that. The brujo responds, what do you mean drop that? This is my reputation. Like, I have a reputation. I have been paid. I have a job to do. Why would I drop it? Then goes, this woman is protected by God. She is a follower of Christ. We cannot touch her. You cannot touch her. You're gonna have to drop this. And tells him the word has been passed down by that you have to let this go. Give the woman her money back and drop the spell that you have going on. So even though the woman that he was doing the spell on was, you know, she was sinning, she was committing adultery, she was with a married man, or I guess somebody was committing adultery there. Even though she was in the wrong, because she was a follower of Christ, she was a believer, she was still protected. So the man had to drop the work. He had to like get rid of it, and he had to give the original woman her money back. What are your thoughts on this? Obviously, I don't agree with anyone doing brujeria on anyone, but just the fact that even though this woman was in the wrong, she was still protected, it's crazy to me. It's just like pretty much like, you know, like our own children, like even though when our children's are at fault, or our children are falling short, or our children are maybe not doing what we believe they should be doing, like we're still going to protect them. Like we're still going to care for them. And it just made me think that regardless of what this other woman had going on, like God was still there. Like he still protected her. He still kept her safe, even if he may not agree with what she was doing. I don't know. That's the message I got from the whole thing. What do you guys think?
Okay, so I just found out the most horrific thing that happened 29 minutes from my house. You might have heard it on the news. Investigators have found over 100 human remains earlier this week at the home of Jonathan Gerlach. This is what he looks like. So get this, earlier in November, he was arrested for having stolen some things from a local hardware store. Here's the list of what he stole: a headlamp, an LED rechargeable glow stick, a hammer drill bit, gloves, and a cutting wheel. And he paid for other items that day, but those are the ones that he wanted to be hidden. I wonder why. And in early December, somebody sent a tip in to the police from a family friend. They said they found a partially decomposed body in his basement, but were too afraid to tell the police. Like, are we kidding? Police also said that when they looked onto his Facebook page, he had been a part of a human bones and skull selling group. This is just out there, and no one's saying anything about this. And additionally, the police found 8 more bodies and jewelry and clothing from robbed graves in his storage locker. And then 3 days ago, on January 6th, he was found and arrested with a burlap bag filled with 2 mummified remains of children and 3 human skulls, among other bones. The police said after 30 years on the job, this is the most horrific thing that they'd ever come across. Oh yeah, and police also said that they found more bones in his Toyota RAV4 that was parked near the cemetery that same day. What in the actual F? So yeah, that's a little too close to home. Trying to wrap my head around, I don't even know. Is this all for that selling page, guys? Like, what kind of stuff am I completely oblivious to? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you haven't already, follow for more creepy story time.
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me tell you guys a story time of this pastor who was treated like a celebrity at church. So how I knew this particular pastor was I was talking to his son. Me and him were talking to be in a relationship, Shame. You know, he was such a good person. Like, he would wake me up every day with a verse, and he would wake me up with a verse, remind me to pray, you know, whatever verse that he sent, that was the verse of the day, and we would pray using that verse. Like, it was cool. At night we read the Bible together, and then we also pray. Like, it was cool, you know. One time he invites me to his church. Like, I chilled. Tells me to get ready at this particular time, and you know, we're going to church together, whatever, and he's gonna pick me up. I don't need to use transport. I said, well, great. So he texts me, he's outside, whatever. I was already ready, I was already done. I walk out. As I walk out, problem number uno, this man comes out of the passenger seat. He's wearing a black suit. He opens the door for me. I'm like, what the hell? Okay, I go inside and I'm like, hi, how are you? You know, we're talking, whatever. He's like, I'm so excited that you're coming to my church. Today I will be preaching. I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah, well, so I ask him, like, what is it with the, like, drivers and all of that, you know? And I say it in front of the driver, and he's like, oh, these are... He's like, these are servants of the Lord. They basically serving my dad and his family. They will get blessings. It's like, what? I was like, oh, I couldn't really question him because they were in front, because I would have feel like that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, you know. I was just like, oh, okay, because the dad was in the car that's in the front. The dad and the mom were in the car in the front, and I think some of his siblings didn't were already at church. I think so, because he's the firstborn. Fast forward, we get to the church, guys. At the church gate, there is a red carpet. There's a small gate where there's a big gate, there's a small gate. This big gate is obviously for cars. So the pastor and his wife come out of the car with the last born of the family, and these people are opening doors for him. And then they walk over to the small gate, and the boy and I obviously have to walk over to the small gate. We are walking with one guy, and the pastor's also walking with one guy. I'm thinking, what the hell? So the cars go inside the church, and then we have to walk into the small gate. When I tell you, there are people on this side, there are people also on this side, and we're walking straight. These people are trying to touch this man like he's Jesus or something. Oh my God, Father, Dad, And then there was this lady that I think touched him on the face because he was too, like, near her. He was too close to her, so she put her hand on here and says, I will be healed in the name of Jesus, Papa. Okay. And then they continue walking. As they continue walking, I'm like, we are also walking, and these people are also like looking at me like, oh, sister, like, I'm like, this is weird. Like, I feel weird. What is this? So we're walking inside, and the dad is also like, the pastor is also touching people's hands, like, you will be healed, you will be blessed. Hi, okay, we walk inside the church. He goes in first. There's nobody in the church. Even people were there outside acting like Jesus just came down from heaven. They walk inside the church. They all sit down, whatever, and they do whatever. As I'm sitting down and this man is preaching, I don't know if it was a vision or what, I see a black snake that's just crawling, a very big one that's crawling. You see that thing? You see that it's the roof, isn't it? Not the roof, man, the ceiling, and then there's the wall, and then there's that in between thing. Yeah, this big black snake is crawling on the church. I'm like, what the hell? I start praying. I look down and I start praying. Like, maybe I'm thinking this is a spiritual attack, like the enemy, the devil is trying to attack us or something. I look down and I start praying. But as I'm praying, I see the snake is just going around and like spitting something at people, and I'm just like, so I open my eyes again and I look up, because now I'm praying and I'm just seeing worse stuff. And then I still look up and I still see the snake, and I can't scream, I can't do anything. As I get up thinking I wanted to go to the toilet, because we were sitting in the front row seat, and as I'm trying to get up to go and like to the bathroom, maybe wash my face, I see the snake is standing at the door, and I was like, there's no way. So I go back and I sit down again. Mans continues preaching, whatever. After preaching, they tell people that it's time for them to get prayed for. So as they're praying for these people, they put red cloths around them. They put red cloths around their waist, and then they start praying for them. People are just falling like flies. You know when somebody just does this and everybody's falling on the ground, like he's praying or whatever, and I'm just looking at these people. And I remember they called me to pray for one of these people because they were just screaming, whatever. They said we should take her outside. We take her outside, guys, and we're praying for this lady. And we were just praying, and I stopped praying and I looked at everybody and I just felt bad for the people that are praying, the lady that's just shaking on the floor, because I'm just like, this is all ridiculousness. Like, you are giving your lives to this man that's sucking the blessings out of you guys. After that, they said, yeah, you're going to be well, my sister. She got up and she went inside. They gave her water. Shop, no problem. How? Then it's time for people that are asking for prayers. There is this old lady, guys. She's walking with her granddaughter. Granddaughter is probably like 6 or 7 years old. They get to the stage. It was so sad. She tells the church how she's in need, how her business is not really doing very well. She's asking the pastor to pray for her, whatever. And everybody just, lifted their hands up and they started praying for her, like, God will bless you or whatever. She goes back to sit down, and then there were many stories where people are saying that they can't get jobs, but they pray that the pastor is going to pray for them. And they were like, and then also the pastor was like, please bring your CVs so that he can pray for them, and he will bring them back the following Sunday so that you guys can actually get jobs. Yeah. And I think the problem with these people in this church was the fact that they were sitting down praying and thinking that things are going to come to them, because the pastor was also telling them. And I feel like low-key some of them were actually kind of lazy, because how can a person tell you that I'm going to pray for your CV? God helps those that help themselves. He said, I'm going to pray for your CV, and people that are looking for employees are going to just call you magically. And I was like, wow. Then people were bringing their CVs and they put it in the box and they closed it, and the pastor was like, oh, I feel many blessings. Hey, they were like, preach, Papa. Yeah. I was like, wow. Hey, okay, cool. So the guy that I was with now, the boy, goes to preach. As he's preaching now, he's wearing a bracelet on his hand. And I'm realizing that he's actually using this bracelet, man, to preach. He starts preaching. As soon as he starts preaching, I see that bracelet and it's turning into a snake. Guys, I don't know what was going on in that church. It turns into a snake and he continues like preaching to the people like not nobody's business. And I'm just like, yeah, man, people are actually listening to the sermon. And for what, it didn't make sense to me. Mind you, I've been talking to this person for so long. But now the sermon that he's preaching doesn't make sense. He's saying things in the Bible and he's twisting things. And I'm like, wait. This is not the same person that I was talking to. Like, what? Okay, no problem. People are just saying, preach. Hey, whatever. Church ends. They obviously are giving offerings. And at that church, you give 20 rand and above. They don't want coins. Because apparently people use coins for witchcraft. No problem. People give offering, whatever. They thank the people. They pray for the people. Everybody leaves. It's time for me and the guy to go home. How we have to wait for all the church members to go home. And the pastor took that offering money, because it was nothing but notes. 20 rand notes, 15 rand notes, 100 rand notes, and he gave it to the son and was like, you'll see what you do with this money. Mind you, there was a lady that stood there and her granddaughter and said they're struggling. He takes this money, gives it to this boy. This boy tells me, don't you want us to go out after this? I was like, what? After that, he takes all of those CVs and puts them in his boot, and he's like, we'll see what we do with these. Oh, actually, he didn't even put the CVs in his boot. He left them at the church, and he was like, remember the pastor gets in the church first. Yeah, he will just lie to the people and say, I prayed for this. Hey! When I tell you, after church, they took me home. I blocked this boy. I didn't even wait for anybody to tell me that what they're doing is evil. I blocked him. And then there was this lady that my mom knows, and she was like a prophet type vibe. And she told me and I told her the situation with this boy, and she was like, the snake and all of that. Obviously, that's the thing that they use to attract people in the church. And also, I made a great decision by blocking that boy, because him and his father are doing the exact same thing. His father initiated him into these things, and he's taking his father's footsteps. And also, that boy is not a good person. What kind of good person would agree to do evil things to people? You made a great decision. And I blocked him, y'all. He tried to contact me, and I was just like, hell nah. And I was now seeing him in my dreams. I was starting to see him in my dreams, and I had to pray that away. Hello.
Basements always creep me out. And I don't know what it is about a basement, but they're dark, they're damp, they're underground. And you just always get a bad feeling, especially in those older homes that have like the cellars. When you go down there, it's like going into another world. Now, there's this man named Jack. Jack, at one point in time, moved into this very old farmhouse with his brothers and sisters and his mom and dad. Now, he said this farmhouse was situated in rural Wisconsin, and said it was probably built around like 1890s. Now, it had this old cellar that had this huge, coal burning furnace, and the ground wasn't even concrete. It was partially dirt. But he said it was creepy. And him and his brothers and sisters, they would always avoid going down there. And they didn't like to even go near the basement door. Well, after some time of living at this house, one night, everyone in the house is all asleep. At about midnight, they start hearing screaming. And they hear this man yelling for help and banging on the basement door. So Jack's father jumps out of bed. He runs downstairs and he checks in the basement thinking someone has broken in. It was completely empty. There was no one down there. The doors were locked. So his father comes back upstairs and he tells him, it must have been an animal. Got into the basement and, was making those screaming sounds. So they were all kind of relieved. And for several months, they just avoided the basement. Then one night, their parents went out of town and they left them with a babysitter. Well, he said at about 8:30, 9 o'clock, they were upstairs in the bedroom playing, and their babysitter was downstairs in the living room. When all of a sudden, the power goes out, and it was completely pitch black. The babysitter comes running upstairs. She says, are you guys okay? I think that we blew a fuse, and I need to go in the basement and change out the fuse. Well, Jack and his brothers and sisters are like, we're not going to stay up here alone in the dark. We're going to come with you. So they huddle around her, and they go down into this basement, this root cellar. And as they get to the bottom step and they get in the cellar, she starts looking around with this flashlight for the outlet box. Now, it's pitch black down here. You cannot see anything. You can't even see the person in front of you. The only thing that you could see was this small stream of light coming from the flashlight. And he said all of a sudden, this babysitter stopped in her tracks and she got this look of dread on her face. And she started screaming, yelling, "It's in here. It's over there in the corner. It's here. It's here. We need to leave. It's here." And Jack and his brothers and sisters are confused, what is she talking about? And that's when they look over to where the flashlight is pointing. And off in the corner of this basement, they see the shadow of something. It's dark, it is on all fours, and it is kind of moving around. So they start freaking out and they start screaming. Well, all of a sudden at this moment, the basement door slams shut. And now they are trapped in there. And they can see this thing slowly moving closer and closer to the light. And it's starting to make form. And it is this dark black figure. And they could see a set of yellow glowing eyes staring at them. And this thing is moving around them. And so they decide to take a break for the door. They run up the stairs. They get out of the basement. They slam the door shut and they push the kitchen table up against the door. And all of a sudden, they start hearing this banging and this screaming coming from the basement door. And there's a man saying, let me out of here. And he's screaming just as loud as he possibly can. So they run out of the house and they wait for the parents to get home. They tell the dad what happened. He goes inside. He goes down into the basement. And the next thing they know, this father comes running out of the house screaming, telling the kids to get in the car. We are leaving tonight. And they left and they moved out that night and they never went back and got their stuff. So what do you think? Are basements creepy?
If you've never heard of the Crying Boy painting, I've attached a photo of it. If you've never seen it before, it traces back to post-World War II Europe, specifically 1950s Italy. and is surrounded with urban legend. There's a lot of stories as to why the paintings, the crying children themselves, came around. Some say Giovanni Bragolin painted these children as a post-war tourist trade, and they are snapshots of war orphans. And some say that the most famous of these paintings is the crying boy. It is said he adopted the boy who passed away not long after Bragolin finished the painting, and that his spirit, vengeful from losing his family in a bombing in the war, cursed the painting and any copies. In the 1980s, there was a series of house fires, starting from nothing, which destroyed everything but the painting. Many copies of the painting were made, and Dorothy owned one. She bought it at a market, and knowing its past and its legend, she bought it as she's always been a very spiritual person. She had it in a frame in her spare bedroom where I used to stay as a very small child, though it was destroyed before I can remember. She had the painting for a while with nothing besides her normal activity in her house, but after a while, everything else that happened in her house, like pictures and items falling off walls and shelves and drinks being knocked over, became more frequent and seemed angrier, which was scary for her as these spirits had always been fairly playful. She didn't attribute it to the painting and she carried on. One evening, she was watching her soaps, EastEnders to be specific, and my granddad smelt gas. They hadn't cooked dinner or used the oven, but their hob was on, and a really small flame was flickering on the hob.
Oh.
My nan and granddad swear they hadn't turned it on and couldn't have accidentally, as you had to push the button in and turn it on. They hadn't used it that day, and there was no way that they could have accidentally left it on. My nan burnt and got rid of her copy, I believe, to an antique shop, and she was too scared for her safety and her home to hold on to it. There's a link to a news article from a particular fire that happened in Norfolk around 10 minutes from my nan's house, also linked to the crying boy. That was in 2021, and my nan got rid of hers in around 2009. So the cursed painting, this says, blamed for a Yarmouth fire. And then you've got him from the scrap heap. So this is properly doing the rounds.
Oh my God.
Yeah, this is genuinely. It was the blazing curse of the crying boy, a painting said to have the power to survive or possibly even cause terrible fires that reduce everything else to ash. Such was the belief that the eerie prints of children in tears were haunted by spirits or damned, that a national newspaper held a crying boy amnesty, which saw 2,500 copies burnt on a fire to end the curse. In October 1985, the Eastern Daily Press ran a story about a house in Merseyside which had been burnt to the ground. Everything had been destroyed apart from several crying boy pictures, which were still hanging untouched on walls where even the wallpaper had been reduced to ash. Father of three, David Amos, explained that when he saw the paintings amid the smoking rubble of his ex-wife Lynn's house,
oh God,
he felt
she's
a
always
chill.
following.
I just smashed them up, he said. I never wanted to see them again. Lynn said, I really like the paintings. This happened also in a pizza palace on Regent Street. Last week, a customer asked me what bad luck I had because of the picture. We said, don't be ridiculous. I'm not superstitious, but I'm going to take them off, break them, and throw them away. It's happening too many times
Yeah,
now.
absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
They think there were 50,000 crying boy prints and they were sold in department stores. Basically, get in touch if you've
got one.
If you've got one.
We could do with one, actually.
I know.
Can you buy
put one here and
I
be
bet we
like-
could get one off Vinted.
Yeah, you get everything on Vinted. This jumper, Vinted.
Let's read another scary story that was sent to us. This one comes from Finland. This happened when I was around 7 or 8 years old. I went to the forest with my friends because we wanted to explore new places. We kept going deeper and deeper into the forest, and I wanted to go back home because I had a feeling someone was watching us. But my friends didn't want to go home yet, and I didn't dare to go alone. When we were going across the stream, I saw someone out of the corner of my eye, and I told my friends about it, but they said I was just imagining it. Suddenly, my dad calls me and asks me where I am. I explain to him that we are lost in the forest, and he explains to me how to get out. As soon as I hung up the call, we turned back, and I saw someone peeking from behind a tree. I froze in place. My friends saw it too. It was about 2 meters tall and had gray hair that reached its shoulders. It was just standing in the middle of the trees. It didn't make any kind of noise, and it was about 7 meters away from us. I don't remember what its face looked like or what clothes it had on, but I remember it looked sad and young. We ran out of the forest as fast as we could. When we finally got out of the forest, I looked behind us and it had followed us to the edge of the forest. And it was then that I noticed its feet weren't touching the ground. It was levitating. We watched it disappear back into the woods. I haven't been back to the woods ever since. I have no idea what that could be. I've never heard a story like that before. Have y'all ever heard anything similar to this? Let me know in the comments if you might have any idea of what that could be. Is it just like a spirit in the forest? I kind of feel bad for it though. They said it looked sad. Let's read some more scary Reddit stories. Today for my drink I have Nowadays. This is the cranberry flavor. I'm not sure how smart it is to garden while reading scary stories while also being home alone. Ooh, that is good. Okay, wish me luck. One time I could ignore it, but two is a pattern and now I'm so freaked out. The first time was in December 2025. My husband went outside to smoke and I was gathering a few items and about to head out there with him. Then I have a weird feeling, so I look up and I see my husband's face outside. I thought it was weird he moved the chair to sit in front of the door, and he had a smile on his face. At first I thought he was smiling at our dog. Then I realized how creepy the smile was, and his stare felt crazy. I think to myself, is he okay? And I go out there. To my shock, he wasn't in front of the door where I had just saw him, but on the left side, sitting down on his phone. The second incident happened yesterday. We had just gotten home from our grocery trip. I was focused on getting out of the truck and walked over and saw my husband leaning into the truck getting the groceries. He was rummaging quite a bit and it went on a little too long, so I asked if he needs help and there was no answer. Hayden? No answer. I turned towards the truck and to my shock, no one was there. I straight up saw the shadow figure of him. And right when it had disappeared, my husband came around the corner from our house where he had just placed some of our groceries inside. I am so freaked out. The only thing I find solace in is the fact it was outside both times. I believe it can't enter our home. I hope it's just a bored spirit messing with us, but this is going to send me over the edge. Around 15 years ago, when both of my kids were toddlers, I was putting them to bed one night, and my son was adamant that he wears his favorite red race car pajamas. I happily obliged, helping him change into them, and tucked him into bed. Then I sat down at my kitchen table with a friend who had came over to chat and catch up. The way that my apartment was set up, you could see my kid's bedroom doorway from the kitchen table. My friend and I were talking for a while, but we were suddenly interrupted by the sound of my son screaming. We both turned and looked at the bedroom doorway and saw my son standing there loudly crying and shrieking and wearing his green pajamas with airplanes on them. Everything inside of me was screaming that this was wrong. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end and a cold shiver shot down my spine. My friend and I wordlessly stared at each other for a second. We both knew that my son couldn't change his pajamas by himself yet. We looked back at the doorway and my son was gone. We ran to the bedroom and found him tucked in bed, still sleeping peacefully in his red race car pajamas. My friend asked me if I saw him standing there in his green airplane pajamas, and I confirmed that I had. My friend freaked out and left. I slept on my kids' bedroom floor that night to make sure nothing happened to them. My friend and I still talk about it to this day. It's one of the craziest things that's ever happened to me. My son, of course, doesn't remember any of it, but he loves hearing the story of how his doppelganger scared the crap out of us. Let's read some more scary stories that were sent to us. When I was about 18, I was downstairs hanging out with my cousin, and my mom was upstairs in her bedroom with her boyfriend at the time. I walked over to the bottom of the stairs, and when I looked up, there was a face leaning over the railing just looking at me. I screamed and thought maybe it was my mom, but she swears it wasn't her. Later on, I lived in an old apartment building that used to have a doctor's office on the main level, and I actually lived on the main level. I lived there for about 2 years, and once I got off birth control to try and have a baby, I didn't get my period for 8 months. My fiance and I were in the process of moving out, and I had a door in the apartment open that led directly outside, so we had that open. When you look into the apartment, it's a long hallway. When I looked into my apartment, I saw a little boy on his hands and knees in my bedroom, peeking out from around the corner. I screamed, and nobody had gone into the apartment, so we were all kind of freaked out. So I'm living in my new place for about 3 weeks at this point, and I got my period for the first time in months. Then I decided to look up pictures of the old building, and there was an old picture with a bunch of people in the yard, and the only person looking at the camera was a little boy who looked identical to the one I saw in my old apartment. Okay, I feel like it's not a coincidence that the time that she lived in that old apartment where she saw like the little boy, that she couldn't get pregnant and she never got her period. But then as soon as she moved out, she got her period. Like, our bodies know when something's not right, okay? I just don't think that's a coincidence. Maybe that little boy didn't want a baby in his apartment. I don't know. But nonetheless, I'm glad you moved out and got your period. In 1966, in a small town in South Africa, there were two cousins. One day, the family all got together and the two cousins decided they wanted to go for a swim at the local pool. One of the moms said that was fine, but that one of the cousins' older brother had to go with them. The brother didn't want to, so he decided he was going to go hunt birds instead. The two cousins went to the pool anyway, and when they were walking back home, they met two guys that offered them a ride home. One of the cousins agreed, but the other one wasn't very happy about it. They got in the car anyway, but the two guys didn't drive the girls home. They drove them to a random building where they essayed and pew-pewed them and used their blood to draw on the walls. Later on, the brother showed up at home and asked his mom where the girls were. The mom obviously didn't know where they were since she thought they were with him, so they started looking for the girls. They ended up searching that random building where they found one of the girls in a locker and the other one was lying on the floor. At the funeral, the brother promised his mother that he'd find out who did this. That story is so freaking sad, and I actually looked up the story and they made like a whole TV show about it, I think. I don't know, but that story is so freaking sad.
This is a true story that happened to my dad when he was living in Colima, Mexico. He lived in the countryside at his parents' home, where no buses passed by. To reach the nearest bus stop that went into the city, he had to walk about 2 hours. One day, my dad was up early, as usual, helping with the farm. His dad asked him to also get dinner, so my dad took his shotgun and went hunting for food. As he walked, he took shortcuts through a field, a path he had taken many times before. Suddenly, he heard loud noises and a man shouting, "Órale, órale," along with the cracking sound of a whip, like someone herding cattle through the fields. But the field my dad was walking through had no cattle at all. Everything around him was calm and nothing was moving. After he returned home with a rabbit, my dad told his father, my grandpa, about what he had heard while hunting for dinner. My grandpa listened and then, in a very calm voice, told him that it was El Diablo herding cattle. My dad later told me that from time to time he would hear it again, but he chose to ignore it since he was a skeptic. There are other stories that happened to my dad, but this one has always stood out to me the most. My dad has always been sensitive to seeing and hearing things, but he would curse them in Spanish and they would disappear.
Weird spooky story time. This footage was sent to me by a fellow spooky vendor, and the story behind it is heavier than anything you're about to see. As a trigger warning, the story mentions OD and the loss of a loved one. So she said the other day she had some friends over and they were talking about the loss of a loved one who had passed last year. And unfortunately, it was from fentanyl. It was a painful conversation with grief mixed with anger. She told me that if it hadn't been for one thing, knowing her friend's passcode, the truth might not have ever come out. She was able to unlock her friend's phone, call 911, and see the messages between her friend and the person who gave her the F. Those messages mattered. They told a story that no one else could. Because of that, the person responsible did not get away with it. At the end of the night, she walked her friends out of the house. When she came back inside, the lamp in the room suddenly turned off. She knew that the switch was still turned on. Then the lamp started flickering. She tried flipping the switch, but nothing changed. No control, no explanation. Just the light turning off and on by itself. She doesn't believe it was electrical, and she doesn't believe it was random. She believes this was her friend. A way of saying, I'm still here. I see what you did. Thank you for speaking for me. Ugh, I'm getting goosebumps telling this story. Not every unexplained moment is meant to frighten us. She was able to get her phone out and get the tail end of what the lamp was doing, and here it is.
When my husband passed away, people called me the most luckiest woman on earth because my husband was the wealthiest man in our community. He was generous. He donated. But little did they know, I was living a nightmare. At exactly 1 a.m., I would wake up to footsteps, to the point that I was hearing whispers of my own name. I searched, and what I found shocked me. Story time. I was married to my husband for a couple of years. We have got no children. You may ask why. We tried, but at a certain point of the pregnancy, I will always have a miscarriage. It got to a point that I thought someone had a hand in my miscarriages. I went from church to church. I had the most expensive treatments, but yet it still didn't help. My husband was the kind of man who wanted to help the community because he grew up very poor. So he wanted to help the less fortunate. He wanted to give back to the community what God has blessed him. So he built schools, churches. He sponsored school fees, anything, you name it, he would do it for the society. Because of that, he was well liked in our community. Everyone praised him. His name traveled very far. Suddenly, he started feeling unwell, to the point that I woke up one morning to find him cold in bed. I was devastated. I felt like my world came crashing down because he's the only man I have ever known, the only man I truly loved. So how do I start without him? We did the burial, the funeral. Fast forward to 2 weeks. I couldn't sleep. I would wake up to hearing footsteps. Footsteps on our hallway. Sometimes I will hear something whispering my name. At first, I thought it was just a grief. I thought I was daydreaming because sometimes I would hear it during the day as well. Sometimes I thought it was just me imagining things. I was also hearing sounds coming from my husband's study room. This was the very room that my husband warned me to never ever enter there. Although it was his study room, you might ask why. It was the exact same questions that I asked myself. But his reason was that he didn't want me to disturb him. It's his place to just focus and do what he needs to do. So I respected that. But when I started hearing sounds coming from that room when he passed away, which I never did when he was alive, I woke up at exactly 1 a.m. to this banging noise coming from that study room. I went there. I opened the door. I was shocked. It was nothing like a study room. The smell, the stench that hit me, like the smell of dampness. And when you breathe in the air, you could taste bitterness in your mouth. I was surprised. I turned the lights on and I was hit with the biggest shock ever. I saw a box in the corner. It was covered with a red cloth with certain things written on it. I was scared. I didn't know what was in that box. I went slowly, pulled the cloth off, and what I saw inside that box. Please go to part 2. And if you want part 2, please comment part 2. This is part 2 of people called me the most luckiest woman when my husband passed away, simply because he was the wealthiest man and everything was left for me. So, as I entered the room and I saw that box in the corner, I walked towards it very slow because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what was inside that box. My heart raced faster. I saw on the other side of the room, it was like an altar of some sort that he worshipped. But I thought he was a Christian. Anyway, I proceeded to investigate to see what was inside that box. I pulled off the cloth and I opened the box because it wasn't locked. My jaw dropped because I saw the scanned pictures of all of our unborn babies, the babies that I kept miscarrying. My heart sunk because I failed to believe what I was seeing. I turned and I checked the back of these pictures. There were strange words that I do not recognize, written on the back of it. Also, I noticed there were dates written at the back of it. I'm not talking about dates the scan was taken. These were just random dates on each and every one of these scanned pictures. I rummaged through the box and I saw even more chilling pictures. These are pictures of random children. Some of them looked happy, some of them very sad, some of them without any expressions on their face. Also on the back of these photographs, there were dates written at the back of them. also these strange words on them as well. I began to wonder if my husband was into something, but I was in denial. I sat on the ground, and then one of the pictures made me realize something. I remember seeing that picture on the news about a missing child. So chills run down my spine. I ran out of that room. I locked the room and I sat there. I didn't know whether to tell someone, whether to keep it to myself. I didn't even know. But I knew my husband had this very close friend, someone that was like a brother to him. So my first thought was to ring him to see if he had an idea what this was about. I rang him and I told him that he needs to come over to the house. Within half an hour, he got there. So I told him to come with me to my husband's study room. He did. We got in there and I showed him the box with the pictures in there. His best friend didn't have any surprised look on his face. He seemed like someone who knew about this. He shut the box and he told me I should never ever let a living soul hear about this. If not, they will come after my life. I asked him what he meant by that. He wouldn't tell me. He hesitated for a while. Then he tapped me and said, "My dear, your husband wasn't who you thought he was. He was into this covenant, a group, whatever you want to call it. And they were sacrificing these children, as well as my unborn babies, for his wealth. So all that money was blood money. So he told me I shouldn't let anyone hear because they will come after me. And he said to shut the door, never ever to enter there, and he left. I could not stay in that house after what I heard. So I packed up and I went to stay at a close relative's house. But then I started having nightmares. Nightmares that these children were crying every night in my sleep. Some of them had bloody eyes. Some of them were crying blood tears. Some of them begged and called my name to help them. Some said to save them. At first, I thought it was just a dream because of what I saw. But I couldn't sleep. This got worse and worse. So eventually, I went to a Catholic church and I confessed to a priest. The priest said I need to do what is right. And that was it. So I left and I didn't think much of it. But these nightmares kept on getting worse and worse. So I drove back one day because I had enough. I went back to the house. I took all the evidence and I handed it to one of my best friends who happens to be a police officer. I told her everything and she said to leave it with her. After a couple of weeks, they arrested a couple of men, including my late husband's best friend. Apparently, they were also doing exact same thing. Also, I decided to donate the house that my late husband left in my name to an orphanage for them to use it as an orphanage. That was the least I could do. I learned that silence protects evil. Many people see evil things happening, but they turn a blind eye because they think it is safer keeping it quiet. And also, the people doing these wrong things are powerful, so they do not want to get involved. But it only grows darkness. Every lie we hide becomes a seed, and it grows into something that eats the good around us. So if you see anything wrong or evil being done, please speak up. Keeping quiet, this can destroy the generation that is yet to come.
You can't make this stuff up. Might have known the story of real life boogeyman.
Want to see another creepy photo? Good, I'm going to show it to you. But first, I'm going to just make the obvious known. I'm going to put a sticker over this kid's face. This was taken off of some kind of baby camera. It was sent to me. I don't know these people. I don't know this kid. But there's no reason for me to be sharing kids that I have no clue who they are. I don't think anyone should be sharing little kids on the internet anyway, so I'm going to put a sticker over their face. But I also want to make it very clear that the little girl's face is not the focal point of this photo. This went off in the middle of the night. They looked at it. They were like, who the hell is that? And we're freaked out, obviously. Now, a lot of people have their own opinions about this, but I want to get yours. Look over there. What is it? Here's a little better pic of it. What's happening? It looks like someone in a nightgown like leaned forward with their hair hanging down and like their arms kind of bent, but I don't like it. I don't like all these weird things. I don't know, if I had a camera on my kid and something like that popped up, we're moving. That's the answer to that. We're moving.
This is the last photo ever taken of this woman, and it was taken by the man who would kill her moments later. You can literally see the fear on her face when he took this photo. It is believed that the person I'm about to tell you about might have like the highest victim count out of pretty much any serial killer in the US. The problem is that he was very smart and he would kill across state lines. He was a trucker and he would drive across the entire country, and he actually turned the living quarters of his truck into a torture chamber, and he would hold women there for weeks. He would abduct them in one state, drive for weeks with them, torturing them the entire time, and then dump them somewhere else. And so many of his victims were probably never found, or if they were likely unidentified and marked as Jane Does and never connected to him. We don't know exactly how many people this man killed, but it's likely very high, and I'm going to tell you about the people we do know that he killed right now. So I'm going to start at the beginning. In 1986, a couple, they were 24-year-old Patricia Candace Walsh and 26-year-old Douglas Scott Ziskowski, were both in Seattle. They were a couple, and they both just vanished, like they suddenly went missing in Seattle. Around the same time that they had gone missing, an 18-year-old named Shayna Holtz runs to the police and says she had been abducted and escaped her assailant. She tells the police like everything she knows, and she even describes the guy. They actually track him down based on her description, and the guy's name is Robert Ben Rhodes. He's a trucker. He's a creepy white guy who's like 45-ish years old, and he was born and raised in Council Bluffs, Iowa, but he travels all over the United States because he's a trucker and that's what he does for a living. She says that the guy that abducted her was driving his truck, and she reports that when he picked her up and abducted her, she spent 2 weeks at least in his car being held prisoner in this torture chamber, this like room of nightmares in the back of his truck. She said he assaulted and tortured her, and it was just like horrific and horrendous. But unfortunately, likely due to a combination of fear of the guy and the lack of evidence, she never actually pressed charges. So even though they were able to track this guy down, he was never brought to any sort of charges. And again, a lot of that was probably lack of evidence. It was just kind of her word versus his. And I don't really know why they didn't look in his truck. I don't know if it was just because she wouldn't press charges, they couldn't get a warrant. I'm not sure, but they just like let him go. In January of 1990, so just a little while later, some remains of a male were found in Texas. At the time, they were unidentified. They were marked as a John Doe, and there was no connection to this man at the time. On April 1st of 1990, a trooper in Arizona sees a truck on the side of the road with his hazards on. He pulls over to see why there are hazards on with this guy's like truck, like that shouldn't be happening, pulls over, opens the truck to find a horrifying sight. Like an absolutely jaw-dropping, ghastly, like I don't know how this trooper like recovered from seeing this. He opens it and sees a woman screaming inside. She is handcuffed and bound. It's clear she was being tortured. She's being held against her will. She is screaming for help inside this truck. He's expecting to open this truck and see like some boxes and crates and like this trucker sleeping or something. And instead he opens it to like this horrific torture chamber and this woman being held prisoner inside. The woman's name was Lisa Pinnell, and she is begging for help. Obviously, the police help her. They get her free, and they discover that there is a man in the truck as well. And when they're like, why do you have this woman? Why is she bound and like clearly not wanting to be here? He tries to make up like a story about like, oh, it was S work. I hired her and then she just didn't want to do it anymore. But he couldn't talk his way out of it, thankfully. We've unfortunately seen people talk their way out of things like this before, and the police believe the man and not the woman. Fortunately, in this case, they get her to safety. They don't believe the man, and they arrest him. And the police get the guy's identity and realize that it is Robert Rhodes. So he is arrested, they bring him to prison, and they charge him with assault and a bunch of other stuff. And they start to look at like, who is this Robert Rhodes guy? Like, why did he have this woman in his truck? So they're looking into him. He's going to trial for the basically abduction of this woman, Lisa Pinnell. And while they're waiting for the trial to start and everything, and for him to go to prison and for him to be charged, on September 29th, the body of a 14-year-old girl was found nude and badly decomposed in Illinois. They are able to identify her as Regina K. Walters, who had been missing since February in Texas. They were already becoming suspicious of Robert having some illegal activity in Texas, and now they find the body of a girl who went missing from Texas. And Regina had been missing for quite some time at this point, and they thought she had actually run away with her 18-year-old boyfriend, Ricky Lee Jones. But a few months after they ran away, Ricky's body had been found, and he had been shot in the head. So obviously then they weren't thinking they had run away, and everyone is looking for Regina, but they have no idea where she is. Until they do end up finding her body, nude and decomposed. It's clear that these two were murdered. An autopsy was done on Regina's body, and it was clear she had been tortured and strangled to death. On October 26th, halfway across the country in Utah, some deer hunters are walking around the woods and they find skeletal remains. At the time, the police couldn't ID the remains, so they called her Jane Doe 1. But at the same time, in Texas, they are finally able to ID the John Doe that they had found. And they realize his name is Douglas Sikowski, the man who had gone missing in Seattle. So we now have people from Seattle, Utah, Texas, and they're like, how did this guy go from Seattle to being murdered in Texas? Like, what is going on? And they're starting to realize that Robert is likely linked to all of this. And they're looking at his history, they're looking at where he was traveling, and they're realizing he was in Seattle at the same time that Douglas and his girlfriend went missing. And so they definitely are thinking he could be related to these cases, but they still don't know where Patricia is or if she's alive or dead. It wasn't until 2003 that they end up realizing that Jane Doe 1, the body that was found in Utah by the deer hunters, was actually Patricia's body. So Robert ends up admitting to the police after like multiple different interrogations and years passing. He killed Douglas and Patricia. He said that he had picked them up while they were hitchhiking in Seattle, and he almost immediately killed Douglas and then drove his body to Texas, dumped him, and kept Patricia for weeks, torturing and assaulting and her. He ended up being sentenced, and he was sent to prison for life. He is imprisoned in Illinois still to this day. And after he was arrested, he not only admitted to killing Patricia and Douglas, they also found this photo of Regina Walters in his home. This is the last known photo of Regina Walters, and he took the photo. Since being arrested, he is also admitted to having killed many more people, well, potentially hundreds and potentially more than any other serial killer in the US. But unfortunately, the police can't tell for sure. They don't know if he's telling the truth, and he won't give any specific details. He enjoys taunting the police and not giving enough information. He just keeps playing with the idea that he's killed a lot of people, but he won't give specifics. And so right now, we don't know. He had a torture chamber in his truck. He was happily taking people from one state, torturing them, and dumping them in another state. So he likely had so many more victims. Likely many of them were from Texas or were dumped in Texas. And Texas is actually the leading state in unsolved serial highway homicides, according to the FBI. He's just a terrifying, scary guy. The fact that he's still alive in prison today, like, sends chills down my spine. That's so scary. And the fact that there's this photo of this 14-year-old little girl who he abducted and tortured before killing her is just absolutely, like, haunting, and I can't imagine what she was feeling in that moment, and it's absolutely heartbreaking.
Have you ever heard the story of Charlie No Face? There's a legend in Pennsylvania that talks about a man named Charlie No Face Man. This legend talks about a green man with no face that walks around rural roads in Pennsylvania, although some versions of the legend do say that if you pull up to the Green Man Tunnel in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that honk 3 times that the green man will appear in your headlights. There are many versions of what exactly happened to Charlie No Face, some people thinking that he was in a tragic accident that took his life while he was walking down the roads. Other people think that he fell into a vat of acid, and some people have even gone as far as to say as he was struck by lightning. But in the legends, he always has a strange hue of green to his skin. His skin is green, and that's why maybe some people have thought that there was acid involved, and that's what turned his skin green. The sad part about this legend is that Charlie No Face is 100% real. His name was Raymond Robertson. He was born on October 29th of 1910. He was a very normal boy. When he was just 8 years old, he and a group of his friends went to the Wallace Run Trolley Bridge. This was a very dangerous hangout, but this didn't deter his friends from going to this place. Just before they go visit this place, there was a young boy who had tragically lost his life when he was electrocuted with 22,000 volts of electricity. Despite all of that, his friends dared him to climb up a pole and look at a bird's nest. He did that, and he was electrocuted. Charlie's injuries were extensive. He lost both of his eyes and his nose was burned off. His arm was also burned off, and no one really knows if it was the left or the right one. Doctors did not think that he would survive, but miraculously he did. After he recovered from his injuries, Charlie mostly spent most of his time inside the house, but he wanted to be outside. He wanted to go experience fresh air, so at night he would start walking the rural roads of Pennsylvania. He would often try to wear like a prosthetic nose and sunglasses to cover his injuries, but this didn't stop people from stopping, trying to catch a glimpse of Charlie No Face. But Charlie continued to walk. He would take a cane with him. He would keep one foot on the pavement and one foot on the dirt road. He would just walk the back roads. People eventually figured out what he was doing, tried to catch a glimpse of him. Some people would have been really nice about it, while others were cruel. He was also hit by cars several times. The people who were kind to Charlie No Face would bring him cigarettes and beer and just try to get to know him as a person, but others weren't as kind. But over time, the story of Charlie No Face morphed into this urban legend that we hear today. Sadly, he passed away when he was 74 years old, but as far as I can tell, he was a kind man who just wanted to spend time outdoors. It really makes you think that maybe we can be a little bit kinder, but what are your thoughts on this? Let me know down in the comments and follow for more.
He shot and ended his wife's life because he didn't want her to change the TV channel. Like, do y'all hear how ridiculous that sounds? And to think that it gets worse. So this waste of oxygen is Justin Kelly. He's 47 years old, living in Lakeland, Florida with his wife, Destiny. He has 2 teenage stepkids, which belong to Jesse, and then a biological 1-year-old that they had together. And on December 22nd, everyone is just at home relaxing and enjoying the time off since it's almost Christmas time. And that's also when Justin's favorite football team, the 49ers, played a super important game. So he made sure to grab his favorite pack of beer, go outside to his man cave or shed, whatever you want to call it, and go watch the game. But for some reason, once the game was almost done, Justin was like, you know what? I want to watch the rest of the game inside the house. But when he makes his way into the living room, he notices that Destiny already had the TV on playing with one of her shows. And instead of being like, oh, you know what? Let me just go back inside my shed and continue watching it there so that way I don't disrupt my wife. This man grabs the remote and plays the freaking game anyways. And Destiny standing there like, hello, why did you do that? Can you please put my channel back on? You have your TV in your shed. I was just watching something. And Justin immediately starts yelling at her and being super aggressive about the fact that he doesn't want to give her the TV back. He was probably slurring his words because he was so drunk and screaming, no, this is my house, damn it. I pay the bills. I do what I want. Or something like that. I don't know. But honestly, that is what I'm imagining from this man. And whether it was because she knew how aggressive this man gets when he's drunk or just out of pure luck, Destiny tells her 12-year-old son, who's standing in the corner completely petrified, get out of the house and call 911 now. So this poor boy, who for story purposes we'll call Tyler, he starts frantically running towards the front door and out of the house. But the moment that he gets outside, he hears this loud bang sound, and then he hears another one, and now he's even more terrified because he's hoping to God that that sound isn't what he thinks it is. Because to him, it sounded like someone just shot a gun inside his house. And scared out of his mind, he runs to his neighbor's house right next door, who by now had also heard those really loud bangs. And they're all like, oh my God, are you okay? Are you hurt? And Tyler's like, no, please call 911. Something really bad is going on inside my house. And so these neighbors quickly pull out their phones and they dial 911, and almost immediately with their lights blaring, a group of police cars pull up right in front of the house, and they hop out with their vests on and weapons in their hand, and they start making their way towards the front door of the house. And the moment that they walk in, they see a puddle of blood, and lying near it was Destiny, and from the looks of it, she had been shot in the head. But this is where it gets worse, because now these officers are realizing that their own lives are also at risk because they can't find Justin, which means that he could be hiding anywhere in the house with a loaded weapon, just waiting for them to make a mistake so that he could take them out as well. And so they very cautiously move throughout the house, going room to room, searching for him, and eventually they make their way into one of the bedrooms. And that's when one of the officers sees something so stomach turning that they just were not expecting to see. Lying on the ground was Destiny's 13-year-old daughter, who for story purposes we'll call Amy. And from the looks of it, Amy had been shot twice. Once in the shoulder and once in the face. And these officers are like, what in the world? What is going on? Why would Justin do this? Where the hell is he? So it would turn out that after Tyler had ran out of the house to call 911, Justin and Destiny continued to have this heated argument about literally just changing the freaking channel. And at some point, Justin got so angry, like icy red angry, that he pulled out a weapon, aimed it at Destiny, and pulled the trigger on his own wife. And after that, he walked to Amy's room with the weapon still in his hand. He opened the door, casually lifted the weapon, and aimed it straight at Amy. Amy's obviously petrified, and she does what anybody in her shoes would do while they basically stare death in the face. She literally starts begging him, saying, please, please don't kill me, I beg you. But Justin, even after hearing her pleas for him to spare her life, he still firmly presses that trigger, and bang, bang, Amy drops to the ground just like that. And immediately after, he hears sirens coming. They're far away in the distance, but he hears them and he's like, crap, I need to get out before I get caught. So he sneaks out of the house and he runs towards Lake Wales. And at some point, he makes his way to his deceased father's house and he hides himself in the backyard shed. But pretty quickly, police find out that he's hiding there and they quickly pull up to the front and they start screaming, get out now! But nobody is coming out. And police are like, we know that you were there, so get out now. And while Justin is hiding inside the shed, he starts screaming, no, 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 I'm not going to jail. I would rather be dead than going to jail for the rest of my life. And that's when he grabs his weapon one last time. He loads it up, aims it at his own head, and bam! Just like that, Justin chose to take his own life instead of dealing with his sins. And Tyler, he was really heartbroken. I mean, he just lost his mom and his sister, but at some point, he did find out some news that would at least add a little ray of hope into his life. His sister, by some miracle, somehow survived. When police had found her on the ground, she was quite literally on the verge of death, but they got there right on time and they were able to rush her to the hospital. So as of right now, she's in critical condition, but she's alive and alert, which is like, wow. Oh, and also the 1-year-old boy was completely unharmed, so that was really reassuring. This was such a horrible case to end the year off, but I pray that 2026 honestly just brings more love and unity to all of us. I love you. Mwah. Group hug.